Elliot had always lived a quiet life. A scientist by training, he spent most of his days working in his small lab in the outskirts of Earth's biggest city. He was curious, thoughtful, and always fascinated by the mysteries of the universe. But despite his many discoveries, Elliot never expected that his life would change because of a simple envelope. It arrived on a Tuesday morning, carried by a drone he had never seen before. The envelope shimmered faintly, almost as if it had its own light. Curious, Elliot took it carefully and opened it. Inside was a card with smooth, golden edges. On it, written in elegant characters, were words that made him blink twice. "You are invited to the wedding of the royal family of Zephora. Your presence is requested as a guest of honor." Elliot stared at the words, unsure whether to laugh or panic. Zephora. He had read about it in scientific journals, a planet far beyond the outer colonies, known for its advanced technology and strange, beautiful creatures. He never thought anyone would invite him, an ordinary human from Earth, to their royal wedding. The card included instructions for travel. A small, sleek shuttle would pick him up at dawn. There was also a note. "Leave all worries behind. Your journey will be safe, and your presence matters." Elliot shook his head in disbelief. He had seen many unusual things in his career, but this was something completely different. The next morning, as the sun rose over the city, a shuttle unlike any Elliot had ever seen hovered silently over his home. Its surface was smooth, metallic, and almost alive, reflecting the sky and city lights in shifting colors. A voice, calm and melodic, echoed in his mind. "Elliot, welcome. Your journey begins now." He stepped inside, heart pounding, and felt a strange warmth as the shuttle lifted off. The earth grew smaller beneath him, and soon he was surrounded by the infinite black of space, dotted with stars. He tried to calm himself, reminding himself that he was a scientist, used to the unknown. Yet nothing in his experience could prepare him for what awaited. After hours of travel, the shuttle approached Zephora. From a distance, the planet looked like a jewel. Its surface shimmered in shades of blue, purple, and gold. Strange forests of crystal-like trees glowed softly, and rivers of light curved gracefully across the land. Elliot could not believe his eyes. It was more beautiful than any picture he had ever seen, more alive than any simulation he had studied. When he landed, he was greeted by beings unlike anything on Earth. They were tall and slender, with smooth, translucent skin that glimmered faintly in the sunlight. Their eyes were large, full of color and depth, reflecting the brilliance of the world around them. They bowed gently, welcoming him with gestures that felt both alien and familiar. "Welcome, human guest," said one with a soft, musical voice. "You are honored to join us. Follow me, and you will see the celebration." Elliot followed, trying not to stumble as he walked on paths that floated slightly above the ground, supported by some invisible force. Every step revealed more wonders. Flowers that sang in harmony, streams of water that glowed softly, and creatures that seemed to float rather than walk. He had read about alien worlds, but experiencing one was completely different. His heart raced with excitement and wonder. Finally, he arrived at the palace. It floated above the land, vast and shining with colors that changed with the sunlight. The walls seemed to be made of crystal, reflecting the sky and surroundings, while towers spiraled upward, disappearing into clouds. Guests were arriving from every corner of the galaxy. Beings with wings, tentacles, multiple eyes, and forms he could not begin to describe moved gracefully among each other. Elliot felt small and out of place, but he also felt a strange sense of belonging. Despite their differences, everyone seemed to share a quiet joy, a sense of celebration that transcended species and worlds. He noticed a group of beings laughing softly at a playful display of light and sound. Another group was exchanging glowing objects that hummed gently. Everything seemed alive, vibrant, and full of meaning. Then, amidst the crowd, he saw her, Liara, the eldest princess. She was standing a short distance away, observing the guests with calm eyes. Elliot could not explain why, but he felt as if she was looking directly at him, though their eyes had not met. There was an intelligence in her gaze, a quiet curiosity that mirrored his own. He turned away quickly, unsure whether to be embarrassed or amazed. As the afternoon passed, Elliot wandered through the palace gardens, observing the customs and decorations. Every corner held a new surprise: fountains that sang melodies, bridges made of liquid light, and trees that changed color with the emotions of those nearby. He spoke with some of the guests, using gestures and the translator devices provided. He learned about Zyphora's history, their culture, and their deep respect for knowledge and creativity. Yet, Elliot could not shake the feeling that something unusual was happening. Many of the guests seemed to glance at him with interest, whispering among themselves. He tried to ignore it, reminding himself that he was just a guest, here to witness a wedding. But deep down, he sensed that he was not just any guest. Something about this world, and perhaps this gathering, had singled him out in ways he did not yet understand. As evening approached, the palace shimmered under the light of Zyphora's twin moons. Lamps floated in the air, casting soft glows on the guests below. Music filled the air, not from instruments, but from the very atmosphere, vibrating gently and harmonizing with the hearts of those who listened. Elliot felt a strange peace, as if the planet itself was welcoming him, encouraging him to embrace the unknown. And then, at the center of the grand hall, a voice announced the beginning of the traditional ceremony, a ritual where the princess would choose her life partner. Elliot froze. He had not expected to be part of anything more than a spectator. Yet, as he glanced toward the crowd, he realized the eyes of the princess were fixed on him again. This time there was something more: recognition, curiosity, perhaps even hope. Elliot's heart pounded. He had come as a simple guest, a human observing an alien world. He had never imagined that his life could change in a single day. But as he looked around at the dazzling palace, the floating gardens, and the guests from countless worlds, he felt a spark of possibility. Somehow, he sensed that this invitation was only the beginning of an adventure far greater than he could have imagined. He took a deep breath, straightened his posture, and stepped forward toward the center of the hall. The universe was vast, full of wonders and mysteries, and somehow, for reasons he could not yet understand, it had chosen him. Elliot stood at the center of the hall, surrounded by creatures and beings he could barely describe. Some had wings that shimmered like rainbow silk. Others had eyes that glowed like tiny stars. The palace itself seemed alive, the walls pulsing gently with soft light, responding to the presence of the guests. Yet through all this alien beauty, Elliot's gaze was drawn again and again to the eldest princess, Liara. She stood near a raised platform, her posture regal, her calm eyes surveying the hall. Her translucent gown reflected the light of Zyphora's twin moons, shifting in colors that seemed to mirror her emotions. Unlike the other guests who whispered and gestured toward each other, she observed silently, with a quiet strength that made her seem both distant and approachable at once. The announcement for the beginning of the traditional partner selection ceremony echoed through the hall. The air vibrated with a soft hum, and Elliot could feel the energy of the planet stirring around him. He had read about Zyphora's ceremonies in research articles. They were designed to reveal not just wealth or status, but character, intellect, and emotional harmony. And today, the princess would choose her life partner from the gathered guests. Elliot's heart raced. He had never imagined being part of anything like this. Humans were rare on Zephora, and he was untrained in alien etiquette, unaware of their subtle customs. He could feel the curious eyes of nobles and dignitaries from across galaxies on him, whispering and glancing in his direction. Yet when he looked toward Liara, he saw something different. A spark of interest, a quiet curiosity that seemed to pierce through the alien sophistication of the ceremony. The first part of the ritual involved observing the guests. Each one presented themselves in a display of skill, intellect, or artistry. Some demonstrated their mastery of energy manipulation, forming intricate patterns of light in the air. Others performed music with strange instruments that emitted melodies far beyond human hearing. Elliot, unsure of what to do, simply remained calm, observing and showing respect. He smiled gently at those he passed, answered questions honestly, and even helped a young alien child who seemed lost in the crowd. Liara watched him carefully. She did not seem impressed by the flashy displays of wealth or alien powers. Instead, her attention focused on his curiosity, his calm demeanor, and the kindness he showed toward others. In a hall filled with dazzling spectacles, Elliot's simple humanity stood out. He was not loud, boastful, or showy. He was himself, thoughtful, polite, and genuine. The next phase of the ceremony required guests to share something unique about themselves, a story or discovery that revealed their character. Elliot hesitated, unsure if a human could even compete. But then he remembered the reason he had been invited in the first place: his work as a scientist, his curiosity about the universe, and his belief that knowledge should be shared for the benefit of all. Taking a deep breath, he spoke clearly, recounting a discovery he had made about a rare particle that could stabilize energy fields, something even the Zephorians found fascinating. As he spoke, Liara's eyes lit with interest. She asked a few questions, not to challenge him, but to understand his thought process. Elliot answered honestly, admitting what he did not know and explaining how he would try to learn. The princess smiled softly at his humility and determination. In a world where power and status often overshadowed sincerity, Elliot's genuine approach was refreshing. When all the guests had completed their presentations, Liara moved to the center of the hall. The palace lights dimmed slightly, and a soft, harmonious sound filled the room. She raised her hand, and a glowing orb of light hovered above her palm, waiting for her choice. The atmosphere was tense. Guests from across galaxies watched in silence, their faces curious, some skeptical. No one expected a human, an outsider, with no wealth, power, or advanced alien abilities, to be chosen. Liara looked at Elliot. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the vast differences between their worlds seemed to disappear. She saw his curiosity, his honesty, his gentle courage, and she saw something rare, a human heart capable of understanding and appreciating a universe far larger than itself. Slowly, deliberately, she extended her hand, and the glowing orb floated toward Elliot. A hush fell over the hall. The alien nobles exchanged surprised glances. Some murmured in disbelief. A human? Chosen by the eldest princess? Elliot felt as if time had stopped. He looked around, unsure what to do, his mind racing with excitement, fear, and awe. He wanted to refuse, thinking it must be a mistake. Yet when he glanced at Liara, he saw a quiet, patient smile that told him he was exactly where he needed to be. Gathering his courage, Elliot stepped forward. The moment he touched the orb, a gentle energy flowed through him, warm and bright. He felt connected to the palace, to the guests, and most of all, to Liara. The other guests did not understand it, but the planet seemed to recognize him, accepting him as part of its grand ceremony. He felt a sense of purpose, a feeling he had never known. The murmurs in the crowd grew louder, but Elliot ignored them. All that mattered was the connection he felt with Liara, and the understanding that this choice was not about status or power. It was about trust, respect, and shared curiosity. The princess had chosen him not for what he could offer materially, but for who he was inside. The ceremony continued, but Elliot felt a calm resolve. He had been an ordinary guest, arriving without expectations. Now he was at the center of an interstellar celebration, chosen by a princess whose wisdom and insight surpassed the most powerful beings in the galaxy. The thought was overwhelming, but it also filled him with excitement. He realized that his life had changed forever, and for the first time, he truly understood the vast possibilities of the universe. As the ceremony concluded, Liara extended her hand to Elliot, inviting him to walk beside her. Together they moved through the hall, past the astonished and curious guests. Some offered quiet congratulations, others whispered in disbelief. Yet Elliot felt only wonder, awe, and a strange sense of belonging. In a world full of dazzling differences, it was the simplest of connections, honesty, curiosity, and kindness, that had mattered most. That night, as the celebrations continued, Elliot stood beside Liara, watching the glowing gardens, the floating streams, and the alien guests dancing in harmony. He felt both small and infinite at the same time, realizing that being chosen by the eldest princess was not just an honor, it was a responsibility to embrace the unknown, to respect the cultures and wisdom of alien worlds, and to bring the human spirit, curiosity, courage, and kindness into places where it had never been before. For the first time in his life, Elliot understood that being human was a strength, not because of power, status, or technology, but because of the ability to care, to think, and to connect. And as he looked at Liara, he felt a quiet certainty. This was only the beginning of a journey that would change not just his life, but the lives of countless others across the stars. The day after the ceremony, Elliot awoke in a guest chamber of the Xiphorian palace. The walls glowed softly, reflecting the twin moons outside, and a gentle hum filled the air, almost like a heartbeat. Though the surroundings were beautiful, Elliot's mind was crowded with questions. He had been chosen by Princess Liara, an honor beyond anything he could have imagined. But what did it mean to truly belong in a world so different from Earth? He dressed slowly, feeling the smooth, light fabric of the robe provided for him. It seemed to respond to his movements, adjusting gently as he walked. Elliot marveled at this and countless other small wonders around the palace. Everything on Zephora was alive in ways he had never seen. Plants that whispered in soft tones, light that shifted with mood, and objects that seemed to sense his presence. Yet despite the marvels, he knew the real challenge lay ahead, learning to navigate the customs, expectations, and eyes of the alien world around him. Liara appeared at the door. Her translucent eyes reflected warmth and calm, and her smile was gentle but firm. "Good morning, Elliot," she said. Her voice was musical and somehow comforting. "Today, you will begin the lessons that every chosen partner must learn. The palace, the customs, the people, all are part of your new life here. I will guide you, but you must also observe and adapt. Do you understand?" Elliot nodded, feeling both nervous and excited. He had always believed that learning was the path to understanding, but he now realized that understanding meant more than knowledge. It meant empathy, patience, and the willingness to embrace differences. "I'll do my best," he said sincerely. Their first lesson took them to the grand hall of the palace, where the alien council gathered. Elders from across Zephora and its neighboring worlds were present, their expressions curious and skeptical. They were here to observe Elliot, to judge whether this human was worthy of standing beside Liara. Elliot bowed respectfully, unsure of the precise etiquette, but his sincerity seemed to speak louder than perfection. The council members asked questions, not difficult ones, but deeply thoughtful. They spoke of ethics, decisions in leadership, and scenarios that required careful reasoning. Elliot answered honestly, sometimes unsure, sometimes explaining his reasoning in simple terms. To his relief, some members nodded thoughtfully, appreciating his clarity and logic. Others remained cautious, their alien eyes scrutinizing him with silent judgment. Afterward, Liara led him through the palace gardens. Here, the lessons were subtler. He learned to interpret the moods of plants and animals, to sense the gentle energy that flowed through Zephora, and to understand how the environment responded to the emotions of its inhabitants. At first, Elliot felt awkward and frustrated. Humans were not trained to communicate with living energy fields, and he worried that he would fail. But Liara's guidance was patient, her encouragement quiet but persistent. "Observe, feel, do not force," she said. "The world will respond if your heart is true." Days passed, each filled with lessons and challenges. Elliot met nobles from across the galaxy who had hoped to win Liara's favor. Some were gracious, curious about the human, and willing to share knowledge. Others were less kind, whispering doubts and trying subtle tests to see if he would falter. Elliot faced these trials with humility and courage. He was often tested in ways he could never have imagined, solving complex puzzles, interpreting alien symbols, and negotiating small conflicts between guests. Each time he relied on his natural curiosity, reasoning, and most importantly, his respect for others. One afternoon, a group of alien nobles presented him with a difficult challenge. They demonstrated a device that could manipulate gravitational fields to create intricate structures of floating crystals. They asked Elliot to replicate a simple pattern. At first, he felt hopeless. The controls were unlike anything on Earth. Yet he studied the device carefully, applied his scientific reasoning, and after several attempts, managed to reproduce the pattern. His success was modest, but the nobles' expressions softened. They whispered among themselves, clearly impressed that a human could understand their technology so quickly. Liara watched silently from the side, pride evident in her gaze. "You see," she said quietly later, "it is not about being perfect. It is about effort, attention, and the willingness to learn. These are qualities we value above all else." Elliot nodded, understanding that being human did not make him weak. It gave him a perspective others sometimes lacked. Yet not all moments were easy. Elliot struggled with language nuances, the customs of dining and greeting, and the subtle rituals that governed interactions between guests. Once, he accidentally offended a minor noble by misunderstanding a hand gesture. The noble frowned, and the room fell silent. Elliot felt panic rising, but chose to apologize sincerely, explaining his human background. The noble studied him for a long moment, then smiled faintly and nodded. Respect, Elliot realized, could be earned through honesty and humility. Through these challenges, Elliot and Liara grew closer. She shared stories of Zephora's history, its values, and its hopes for the future. She confided her belief that understanding other worlds and hearts was the key to peace and progress. Elliot listened, fascinated, and offered his own insights from Earth, sharing his experiences of human ingenuity, problem-solving, and curiosity. Together, they began to bridge the gap between two very different worlds, learning that communication and empathy were as important as technology and tradition. By the end of the week, Elliot had begun to feel a part of Zephora, though he remained acutely aware of his differences. The palace, once overwhelming, now felt like a place of learning and wonder rather than intimidation. The nobles, who had initially doubted him, now regarded him with cautious respect. Liara's guidance had been invaluable, and her quiet confidence reassured him that he was capable of more than he had ever imagined. One evening, as they walked through the floating gardens under the soft glow of the twin moons, Liara stopped and looked at him. "Elliot, The path ahead will not always be easy. You will face challenges, both from the world and from those who cannot yet understand you. But remember this: your heart, your mind, and your courage are your strengths. You were chosen not for what you have, but for who you are. Never forget that. Elliot nodded, feeling a swell of determination. He understood that his journey was just beginning. Being chosen by Liara had brought him honor, yes, but it had also brought responsibility. He must learn, adapt, and prove that humans could contribute meaningfully to a universe far larger than Earth alone. As the night settled over Zephora, Elliot looked out across the palace, its glowing streams, and the alien flora that shimmered with soft light. He felt a quiet confidence growing inside him. He was no longer just a human guest. He was a bridge between worlds, a symbol of curiosity, kindness, and courage. And though the challenges ahead were many, he knew that with Liara by his side, he could face them all. The adventure had only just begun. The morning of the grand celebration dawned bright and shimmering over Zephora. The palace floated above the glowing forests and streams of light, ready to host not only the royal wedding but also dignitaries from worlds across the galaxy. Elliot had been awake for hours, observing the palace's preparations. He marveled at the glowing decorations, the floating gardens, and the intricate energy pathways that connected every part of the palace. But despite the beauty, a quiet tension lingered. Liara approached him in the central garden, her translucent gown glinting softly under the twin moons' reflected light. "Elliot, today is not only a celebration of our union," she said, "but also a demonstration of harmony among worlds. We must ensure that every guest, every ceremony, goes smoothly. I trust you will be ready to help if needed." Elliot nodded. He had already proven himself in adapting to alien customs, but he sensed Liara's words hinted at challenges beyond etiquette or technology. He did not yet know how critical he would become today. The ceremony began with grand displays. Aliens of all shapes and sizes moved gracefully through the palace, presenting gifts, performing traditional dances, and demonstrating their culture's arts. Elliot followed Liara, trying to observe every detail. Guests whispered about him, some still skeptical of a human being chosen by the princess. Yet others watched with curiosity, noticing how naturally Elliot interacted with their world. Suddenly, a tremor passed through the palace. The walls shimmered, and some of the floating platforms wobbled slightly. The guests gasped, and the soft music of the palace faltered. Elliot's heart raced. He looked toward Liara, who was already scanning the energy flows of the palace. Something was wrong. A rogue faction from a neighboring system, unhappy with the alliance symbolized by the wedding, had attempted to interfere. A surge of unstable energy threatened to destabilize parts of the palace. Floating platforms tilted dangerously, delicate streams of energy began to flicker, and some decorations collapsed mid-air. Panic began to ripple through the crowd. But Elliot remained focused. He remembered the lessons he had learned over the past week about observation, reasoning, and understanding energy systems. Using what he knew from his Earth-based experiments, Elliot analyzed the energy flow patterns that surrounded the palace. He realized that the instability could be redirected, but he needed to act quickly. "Liara, the platforms!" he shouted. "The energy conduits are overloaded. We can stabilize them if we redirect the flow using the main control nodes." Liara nodded, trusting him fully. "Do what you must, Elliot. The palace and the guests are in your hands." Elliot dashed to the nearest control panel, a complex array of glowing symbols and touch-sensitive panels. To him, it looked like chaos, but he focused on patterns, applying logic and deduction. He used his knowledge of energy stabilization and modular systems to manipulate the nodes. Slowly, carefully, he began to redirect the flow. The palace vibrated under his hands, but his confidence and steady mind guided the process. Meanwhile, Liara coordinated with palace engineers, redirecting excess energy and guiding guests to safe zones. Elliot could feel the surge of energy building as he connected the nodes, his pulse matching the rhythm of the palace's hum. One misstep could cause a collapse, yet he remained calm, methodical, and observant. After tense minutes that felt like hours, the energy flow stabilized. The platforms returned to their proper positions, the glowing decorations shone steadily, and the music resumed, stronger than before. The guests exhaled, some applauding quietly, others staring in disbelief. A human, a simple guest, had saved the day. Liara stepped beside him, her eyes shining with pride. "You see, Elliot, it is not strength or power alone that protects us," she said softly. "It is understanding, creativity, and courage. You have shown that today." Elliot smiled, though his hands still trembled slightly from the effort. He had never imagined that his human knowledge and simple ingenuity could have such an impact in a world so advanced. Yet he realized that the principles of observation, logic, and care were universal. Across galaxies, across species, they remained powerful tools for solving problems. The crisis passed, but its effect on the guests was lasting. Aliens who had doubted Elliot now regarded him with respect, even awe. Dignitaries whispered about the courage of the human who had understood and acted when their own advanced systems had struggled. Some approached him asking questions about his methods, eager to learn from his reasoning. Elliot had never felt more like a bridge between worlds. As the ceremony resumed, Elliot walked with Liara hand in hand. The palace floated gracefully, the energy systems humming in perfect harmony. The guests celebrated with dances, music, and shared stories, now infused with admiration for the human who had saved them all. Later, in a quiet corner of the palace gardens, Liara turned to Elliot. "You have done more than I ever imagined," she said. "Today, you did not just save the palace. You proved that humans, with their curiosity, courage, and empathy, can make a real difference in the universe. I am proud of you, Elliot." Elliot felt a warmth in his chest. He had always valued knowledge and discovery, but now he understood that action, heart, and courage were equally important. Saving the palace had been terrifying, yes, but it had also shown him that humans could stand alongside the greatest beings in the galaxy, not through power or wealth, but through understanding, ingenuity, and care. That evening, as the celebrations continued under the shimmering moons, Elliot found himself standing in the central courtyard, watching the guests mingle and dance. Children of various species played together, their laughter echoing across the glowing gardens. Nobles and dignitaries spoke with him openly, asking questions and sharing knowledge. He realized that a single act of courage could change perceptions, create bonds, and inspire respect. Liara joined him, and together they looked at the palace and the gardens, alive with light and energy. "Do you see, Elliot?" she asked. "Even the smallest being, when true to their heart and mind, can shape the universe in ways that matter." Elliot nodded. "I understand now. It is not about being the strongest or the most powerful. It is about seeing clearly, acting wisely, and caring genuinely. That is what makes a difference." She smiled. "And that is why I chose you. Not for your power, your knowledge, or your status, but for who you are. Today, you have shown the truth of that choice to everyone." The palace continued to glow, the energy streams singing in quiet harmony. For Elliot, this moment was more than celebration. It was a revelation. He had come as a simple guest, untrained in alien ways, uncertain of his place. Yet through courage, intelligence, and kindness, he had become someone who mattered, not just to Liara, but to Zephora and the guests from countless worlds. As the night drew on, Elliot realized something profound. Being human was not a limitation. It was a strength. In a universe full of advanced technology and alien civilizations, the human spirit, curious, empathetic, and courageous, was capable of achieving the impossible. And with Liara by his side, he felt ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, knowing that together they could bridge worlds, hearts, and minds. The crisis had tested him, but it had also revealed the essence of what it meant to be human in a galaxy far beyond Earth. And with that realization, Elliot looked toward the stars, excited for the journey that was only beginning. The palace of Zephora shone brighter than ever under the light of the twin moons. Streams of glowing energy weaved through the floating gardens, and the air was alive with the soft hum of celebration. After the morning's crisis, the guests had returned with renewed admiration for Elliot, the human who had proven that courage and intelligence could bridge even the vastest gaps between species. Elliot walked alongside Liara, feeling a mixture of excitement and calm. The past days had been overwhelming. The ceremonies, the challenges, the lessons of Zyphorian culture, and the unexpected tests of his courage. Yet now, with the palace stabilized and the guests gathered for the final celebration, Elliot felt a deep sense of belonging. This was no longer a world of strangers. It was a place where his heart, his curiosity, and his humanity had found recognition. The wedding ceremony began in the central hall, a vast space suspended above the glowing forests. Guests from dozens of worlds filled the hall, their forms diverse, beautiful, and radiant. Some hovered above the ground, some shimmered with light, and others walked gracefully, their footsteps leaving trails of gentle illumination. Yet amid this diversity, all eyes were on Liara and Elliot. The moment had come for them to officially unite as partners, symbolizing not only love, but also the bond between their worlds. Liara stepped forward, her presence commanding yet gentle. Elliot followed, feeling the pulse of the palace beneath his feet. He looked at the guests, sensing their curiosity, their admiration, and the subtle acceptance that had grown over the past days. He had come as a simple guest, unprepared for the attention of royalty or the expectations of alien society. Now, he stood at the center of a galaxy-wide celebration, ready to embrace his new life. The ceremony was unlike anything Elliot had seen before. Light and energy danced through the hall, responding to the emotions of those present. Symbols of unity floated in the air, forming bridges between guests of different worlds. Liara's hand glowed softly as she placed it near Elliot's, and the energy responded, flowing between them like a living ribbon of light. It was a silent acknowledgement that their hearts and minds were connected, transcending differences of species, culture, and planet. As the officiant spoke, the words translated instantly into Elliot's mind. The essence of the ceremony became clear. It was a pledge, not of domination or possession, but of understanding, respect, and shared purpose. Elliot repeated the phrases silently in his heart, promising to honor Liara, her people, and the responsibility that came with being chosen. Liara did the same, her calm presence reassuring him that he was not alone in this journey. When the ceremony concluded, a wave of energy spread through the palace. Guests gasped in delight as streams of light cascaded around them, connecting every corner of the hall in shimmering threads. The celebration had become more than a wedding. It was a symbol of unity, a demonstration that beings from different worlds could come together in harmony and respect. Elliot and Liara moved through the crowd, greeting guests and accepting their congratulations. Many of the aliens Elliot had initially struggled to understand now approached him warmly. He exchanged stories, shared laughs, and even offered insights from Earth that fascinated the dignitaries. His simple humanity, curiosity, empathy, and courage had won their respect and admiration. In a world of advanced technology and alien sophistication, it was a human heart that had proven remarkable. Later, as the festivities continued in the floating gardens, Elliot found a quiet moment with Liara. They sat beside a stream of softly glowing water, its currents reflecting the energy of the palace. The air was fragrant with luminescent flowers, and the hum of celebration surrounded them like a gentle embrace. "You have done more than anyone could have expected," Liara said softly. "Not just by saving the palace, but by showing that humans, though simple in ways, are capable of extraordinary things." Elliot smiled, feeling a sense of fulfillment. "I never thought I could belong in a world like this," he admitted. "But I've learned that understanding, patience, and courage are more important than anything else. If you trust someone's heart, the rest can follow." Liara nodded. "And that is why I chose you. Not for your knowledge or status, but for who you are. You remind us that the greatest achievements come from care, curiosity, and courage." Elliot felt warmth in his chest. He had come to Zephora as a simple guest, unaware that he would be given a chance to leave a mark on this world. And now, as he looked around at the celebration, he understood the truth of Liara's words. His human perspective had bridged gaps, solved problems, and brought people together. He had proven that even the smallest being, with the right heart and mind, could inspire change across worlds. The night deepened, and the celebrations continued under the glowing moons. Music filled the gardens, a mix of alien instruments and natural harmonics, creating melodies that Elliot had never imagined. Guests from all species danced together, their movements guided by the shared joy of the occasion. Children played in floating streams of light, laughing and chasing one another, while elders watched with serene smiles, pleased to witness the harmony between worlds. Elliot and Liara walked hand in hand through the gardens, observing the unity around them. They spoke of their hopes for the future, alliances between Earth and Zephora, knowledge sharing across planets, and the importance of understanding and respect in building a better universe. Every word carried meaning, not just for them, but for the worlds they represented. "I think this is only the beginning," Elliot said, gazing at the stars above. "There are so many worlds, so many lives to touch, and so much we can learn from each other." Liara smiled, her eyes reflecting the moons. "And we will do it together. We are no longer just individuals. We are a symbol of hope and unity for countless beings. Your human spirit has reminded us of what matters most." As the night wore on, Elliot felt a deep sense of peace. He had come as a stranger, unsure and small. He had faced challenges, learned new ways, and shown courage in the face of danger. And now he had become part of something larger than himself, a bridge between worlds, a symbol of unity, and the chosen partner of a princess whose wisdom and heart matched his own. The palace glowed gently as the guests slowly returned to their quarters, the celebration continuing in quieter tones. Elliot and Liara stood together on a balcony, overlooking the floating gardens and glowing rivers. Below them, the world of Zephora stretched endlessly, full of life, color, and possibility. "Do you think humans will ever be accepted widely in the galaxy?" Elliot asked, a small smile on his face. Liara looked at him thoughtfully. "Humans have already begun to prove themselves, not because of strength or technology, but because of courage, kindness, and the ability to connect. You have shown them what it means to be human, and that is a gift no civilization can ignore." Elliot felt a surge of hope. For the first time in his life, he realized that being human was a true strength. Across galaxies, across worlds, the qualities he had taken for granted, curiosity, empathy, and courage, could shape the universe in ways he had never imagined. Hand in hand with Liara, Elliot gazed toward the stars. The journey that had begun with a simple invitation had transformed his life forever. He had come as a guest, but he would remain as a partner, a friend, and a symbol of the human spirit. The universe was vast, full of wonders and challenges, and together they would face it, united, courageous, and ready to inspire hope across worlds. And so, under the glowing moons of Zephora, the palace shimmered with light, music, and joy. A human and a princess stood together, a symbol of unity and understanding. The wedding was complete, but more importantly, a bridge between worlds had been built, one that promised friendship, cooperation, and the remarkable potential of humanity. The story of Elliot and Lyara would be remembered across galaxies, a reminder that even in the vast universe, simple courage, curiosity, and kindness could create bonds stronger than any technology or power. Humanity, in its simplicity, had proven extraordinary. And thus, a new chapter began, not just for Elliot and Lyara, but for countless worlds ready to embrace the light of understanding, cooperation, and the enduring spirit of humans.